Hey, it is your buddy, Peace and Harmony, with you here today. Much love going out to all the beautiful, empowered harmonizers. Happy New Year to you. Hope the new year brings you health, prosperity, and really the experience of healing, of satisfaction, of fulfillment, of knowing, of mindfulness, and feeling more comfort in really in a better state of flow and grace with your affairs. We're going to get into sort of that mind, body, spirit integration here to really launch off the new year. When we talk about this, I really want to get everything and everybody off to a good start. Before we get started, I just want to give a huge shout out to LL for your kind donation. Thank you so much for your support and contribution to the channel. It really does help keep things going. Let's keep the lights on. Let's moving and grooving. Let's keep it moving and grooving. So it's a great question that someone has here that we're going to take up in this video. And that is to understand, what is it meant to be groomed as narcissist supply? What does it mean to be groomed or truly manipulated by a narcissist or a psychopath? Really, I want to kind of include those terms under the umbrella because really there's a certain degree, but the same issue is the same. And it is that of sort of the wounding of feelings hurt as a tool for manipulating you, your behavior, your mood, your temperament, and your self-actualization or your identity therein. Other tactics basically are utilized to keep them, to keep you basically under their control, under their helm, basically almost like a puppeteer. Jump when I say jump, smile when we say smile. Now you're going to be sad and feeling abandoned. Now we're going to drop this other, so it's this constant minefield, emotional minefield that is in the grooming nature. And the grooming meaning they're trying to cultivate you to be and move. Even down to the very marrow of your I am, the solar plexus, and in your heart where your greatest self and your passion lives. So they try to really cut that off at the jugular, namely with manipulation and hurt feelings, blaming through guilt, embarrassment, and shame. So there are certain tactics that they will thread in and tweeze into interaction that blind their prey. And I'm not joking about this. People who have found themselves here who are wondering how to get beyond this, and they feel you can't really kind of see to the other side. That is the result of trauma-induced mind and body control, and then your spiritual unawareness, lack of awareness of your power, your peace, your fulfillment, really who you are and the way you're meant to be, basically living a life in flow and harmony and not keep hitting these emotional speed bumps that tear you and you kind of relapse into some uncomfortable feelings, either looking back retroactively or even more so, and really even more dangerously and emphatically, I'll say, is your ability to have this space within to be granted and given that in interaction to be able to elicit sort of the prefrontal cortex and discernment and decision making from within without having to take better control or to take acknowledgement of validation from them, basically preceding your own desire. It leads to this whole fog, this whole sort of you're under a spell, or you're just sort of having to lead, not lead, but follow. You're kind of feeling like something's not right. And this is the result, the feeling, which needs to be spoken about out in the open, which means it needs to be looked at, understood, accepted, and then sort of understood from a perspective that where you can release it and let it go, and you're not still sort of harboring it or clenching it or still living in that diseased sort of disarmament, meaning like it's a post traumatic stress. I'll liken it to a soldier who has been to war and they've been through so much. They used to call it like shell shock. When these guys were coming back and they couldn't relax and settle down. They couldn't just unwind. They would be at dinner and they'd hear some dishes rattling and they'd be set off and then under the table because they're reliving in their mind. They're going, oh my gosh, this and this is going to happen again. I have to take shelter, hide, isolate, basically protect myself. There's a feeling of there's this dangerous, unsafe, but it usually conjures up sort of an interaction from them. That is erroneous or flawed thinking. You've been cultivated, you've been groomed, seduced, brainwashed, gaslighted, led to believe, fantasized, and then your ego basically has it, in a deadlock. It basically has it in, just wound up within. Your ego basically is then coming out and screaming, I am a victim, I am hurting, this is so wrong, this is devastating, and those whole feelings are just still there. They're almost like waters that are running deep within you, like a creek. It's still always sort of flowing through you, and this can become very unsettling. Meaning, people become divorced, devoid of, or basically lost from their self. They're like, how do I get back to, something that is livable, where I can not have these blow up feelings or, feeling like just out of control in some manner. See, there's a lot of things interacting and going at play in that manipulation. So number one, you have to understand and really look at what is manipulation. And sometimes it's so difficult for people who have been so beguiled and so for decades. They might be groomed since birth to be this way, to be basically, under the narcissist control. It's very much like an alcoholic. They run everything, through this toxicity, through this disordered way of being, but they rule everything because of their calamity, because they will hurt other people's feelings. They basically, unless you really study body language, which this is a very in-depth topic, of course, but so that's really the application, is to understand that you are a human being. And for all sense of the matter, that means you have a deep part of you that is foundational, spiritual, I am, your vibrance, and where it doesn't keep sort of getting snagged up or hasn't been sort of devoid or have this feeling of being severed off or being used by somebody, squeezed up like a tooth of toothpaste. You can feel this way by an employer, a spouse, a family member, always doing the work, or basically you're under that external locus of control and you don't even know that it is still going on and driving or motivating until you look at and understand what is manipulation and the cause, like the source, which means it's not within you. So it's so difficult to understand that it's you, your amygdala, and your own fight or flight is the sauce that you are living in. It might not be fresh, clear waters, okay? You might be living in a lot of sauce of guilt, manipulation, lack of validation, telling, you're oh, poor you, you're the one who didn't make it, or, all assembly of manipulation, advising you of who you should be as if you're not something already. So it's very complex. If you can understand the manipulation basically is living in denial of your strengths And the acknowledgement and validation, this is purely a social, basically exhale exercise. It involves the breath. Two people breathing, talking simultaneously, i.e. the abuser, which can become, very much devoid of them appearing as such. In other words, they can wear the snakes in suits. They can be the CEO executive that has found a myriad of ways to operate in the shadows, groom other people to do their dirty work, sign up this, do that, and just basically giving commands. And then sort of a guilting as if you aren't along with it, sort of keeping you less than informed and making you look like an imbecile, showing up unprepared, showing up not knowing who's going to be there, or what people are going to say, or other dirty tales that they have sort of tried to soil or taint your reputation. And then you're sort of, instead of living from clarity and sort of being and having a space, okay, that is separate and distinct and full and complete, and that has everything that it needs. In other words, it's not dependent, or it's not requiring to be in a state of codependence. Basically, when you are manipulated or groomed by a narcissist, they're looking for you to do more for them than you do for yourself. They're looking for you to overextend yourself, outdo, push the limits, outdo yourself, run you ragged, basically taking you, in the preclusion or the illusion that it's in your best interest, that you're better, stronger, the man, the woman, if you just go along here, this is how it is. It's just sort of like this silent code that you're supposed to bump elbows with, or something, that you're supposed to, cut your own self off at the jugular and go along with what you do not know is manipulation. But if you don't know anything else, it's very difficult then to see your strength from the outside as that soul, like Superman, Superwoman, or okay man, or okay woman, that doesn't have all these flaws that have been basically shot at you by 1,000 arrows, poison arrows of different, some of them might be feel-good arrows, and this becomes an arousal state that one sort of familiarly returns to it when you're still sort of not healed yet. In other words, your body still keeps going through the motions until you say, what, this is, or the job has squeezed you, to the point of oblivion. You can't even recognize your family. You're so anesthetized by the overwork. You're just like, you're like Sylvester the cat on the floor with the eyes shut, and Tweety Bird's like, are you there? And Tweety's eyes say, come back at 5, he's out. That's not healthy. To keep laying, a flat on your face, or splat, or that's sort of the devalue and discard sort of cycle of manipulation, where they sort of get you where they want you, basically in the palm of your hand. What does that mean? It means that there's a deception of support. There's a withholding and a lack, a negligence, or of a support. It's sort of like a refusal. It's part of their apparatus momentum. In other words, if they're like an Oldsmobile Delta 88, that's all they do. Like, that's their features. Like, that's how that car runs. Like, literally, if you can understand, that there are very distinct types of people, and when it comes to like the spectrum of people who are narcissistic, who have a pathological sense of their own self-importance, simultaneously coupled with a lack of empathy, which means they don't have an ability to show or validate another's feelings. Like literally go, good job, man, or good job, that was like an amazing meal, or I'm so happy for you. Like they're on that, like just got, like we're on a cool, chill playing level. It doesn't have to be all this extreme things that maybe that they're into, or a lifestyle that is just all about the spend, and it's really, it escalates, and then you find that the gap between kind of what you deep inside kind of really want to be. Okay, this is existential. This is the foundation, okay, which has nothing to do with them. If in other words, you have a place. When you're talking about a narcissist, there is no space for you to have your own say, feelings, input, contributions, even though, and it might appear as such, but generally, you're second fiddle, third fiddle, and then pretty soon they blew up your fiddle. You can't even play their game anymore. Something happens. There's always some exposure. And you should say in healing, you know what, I know and see that coming. So you really, as a tool to get out of being manipulated, you have to have the ability in the moment of that pressure and to say and speak to that future self, that I know that I am not guilted into that devalued, hurt, maimed, or otherwise incomplete, indecisive, can't think for themselves type of person. So these are the people who like to shun, who like to dismay, who like to pull half the cap over, and sort of they have the problem, and then when it really happens is that they do have the ability, when you're getting into someone who is psychopathic, who really is, they're the ultimate cherry pickers of who they will groom and manipulate, to be basically in a way that is pleasing to them, but maybe isn't pleasing to you. In other words, a lifestyle, an expenditure, a way that they treat you, some other things. And it's like the old hot potato and tactic when you get into projecting, another type of manipulation tool, which is sort of if you've really been with a boss, a manager, a spouse, boy or girlfriend, they sort of, it's the hot potato effect, which means they're projecting a negative, downcast, constantly downtrodden, hypercritical, chronically critical berating to the point of the foundation of the self, the body, mind, and spirit of others, to show their displeasure with you. Hence, you should drop everything and pay attention to them for guidance. And this becomes this whole hot potato. Basically, I kind of thought about it this way. Projection is like there's a very frail, unvisited, subconscious area of the narcissist, and definitely more in the conscious awareness of a psychopath. They know when they're grooming they'll get them pretty shiny. They will groom you to you. They will have you believing anything under the sun, that you are the most wonderful, my husband, my spouse, my fiance, my employee. They will have you believing, and then the entire rug will pulled out, and then they'll kind of roll you in it, and you cannot see your hands from your face. You don't know where your feet are. You're trembling, you're scared. They will elicit like a panic, paranoia, a panic pattern. This is a manipulation. This is a tactic down to the physical, kinesthetic movement, meaning the whole being of the person, the decision making, the prefrontal cortex, and the amygdala, which is like always, the fear, if you're always sort of motivated by trying to avoid some sort of punishment or gain, you're trying to gain approval, something which is outside of yourself, which in psychology, we call that being based on an external locus of control. An external locus of control. So, for example, this comes very much into the mental fog, like when you can't remember things, you can't remember dates, you can't remember names, you make stupid, goofy, gaffy mistakes, and you're like, and you're like, thank God I live with me because no one else could, the many mistakes you make, it just becomes really an embarrassment. You become like an embarrassment to yourself when you really try to backing out of this. It's like a mush fog that they have, it's the hot potato, meaning they're trying to project and this is water, by the way, they are projecting their subconscious, or in the psychopath, their conscious, they're grooming you. I mean, they know the poison that they're feeding you. I mean, they know what they're doing. It's premeditated, pre-calculated. They know you're going to end in demise. I mean, they're in control from the get-go. And when you get out of that tailspin, that's very horrifying because you don't know where you stand. Your own reality has been so sort of distorted by an illusion or fantasy that they were sort of planting and got you sort of going or believing, and they had no intention of fulfilling the marriage, the child, the promotion, the keeping everything on the up and up with the family, your books in order, your kids educated and knowing who their father is, and other sorts of betrayal that this then ensues. And then for some people, this is basically traumatizing again and again. So that is the manipulation. If you find someone who's constantly sort of trying to hurt your feelings or have you do something to their benefit, meaning they get you convinced that they are somehow worth more, better than, and they have that positive self-referencing throughout the relationship, and they convince you, or you believe that you don't even have a merit of your own standing. So this is, this becomes a deep-seated sort of negative, low self-esteem that can be bred into families, bred into marriages, bred basically intragenerationally. The hot potato, I can't handle this. Here's all my anger. Here's all, and then you're like, oh my, and then you're constantly receiving a hot potato. You're constantly then being judged with how you handle the hot potato. Obviously, they're going to put you in distress, put you into tension, put you into confusion. And then that, basically you have then too much activity of this I'm not good enough. And so you'll have garages full of I'm not good enough, house full of I'm not good enough. And then you're like, where's the love? Where's the love? Or you're like, that sounds really corny, and you thought this was all that and a bag of chips and more. I mean, you basically, that is the grooming. So they don't allow their target. So they can pinpoint in a family. You can have a family who singles out a child to be targeted, the scapegoat. In other words, the hot potato. You're the problem. They're always deflecting blame. They don't have responsibility and go, whoa, I should deal with this as a man, a woman, a father, etc. And I don't have to be then doing something that I'm not comfortable with. Basically, they will violate then the boundaries as if you're not allowed that safety as such. It's like you're constantly, it's like a boundary from a foreign country or your own country where people can just trample and pillage and steal and basically help themselves to all the goods of that country, not have to pay the tax, and then go back with all their goods. And then you're like, I feel like I gave so much, I listened so much, I spent so much time thinking, considering, and hoping. But then, ultimately, hope is not a strategy. When you're being manipulated, you don't really know. It's not your fault. It's not of your wrongdoing. These people, you can find them in certain areas of business. They might gravitate towards specific areas of business, like the Hollywood, the finance industry, New York City, the music industry, the business, the good looking. They have all these other, manipulation tactics. So realize and recognize that what does this mean, then to look at this very painful experience. Painful because it could be going on for a lifelong, meaning I have never known what it's like to live without fear, pain, and then to have that denied, your own existence, voice, experience, time out, which you would develop from. It's like you're emotionally, like a whole limb of that emotional growth tree is just sort of, they just try to break it off so that they can get through, and it would, so the only obstacle, okay, so they so in other words, try to tell you, and sort of, and then when you try to warm up to them, oh boy, do you get the lights out. You try to warm up to them, oh boy, do you get the doors shut, do not disturb. It's like they're gone from existence. They're temporarily unavailable. The system is down. Call back later. It's not convenient. So they're on a whole different clock, pace, life sometimes, and it's sometimes a long time, and until you realize that you don't have a toe to stand on. I mean, you're trying to be Baryshnikov, trying to, basically just live in denial, and you're living, you think you're living this aspiring life, you might be thinking, oh, this, and you're again, the problem is that you're then allowing yourself to take better and do more for them than you do for yourself. There becomes a truly way of thinking and perspective that you are in a belief system, a belief sauce. I am not good. I mean, so if that is running the show, I am not good. What do you think? If you've been taught that, groomed that, manipulate, yelled at, been pounded at, just recognize the tools and tactics. If you can get your eyes open enough to realize, and that and to recognize if you're still in their lie, then you can say, you know what, I still see the lie. And that's okay. It doesn't mean you have to engage and counteract and be like and do like and think like. And then that ego, that wounded, needs to be able to come out and say, I'm not holding on to the victim that you're painting. It's like you walking through the door, the victim door, every time you see them. Stupid could be written over the door for all you know. I mean, instead of you have intimacy, you have safety, you have peace, you have silence, you feel together, you feel okay. You're not worried that there's going to be some news dropped, some comment stated, something ignored, something that made, loops you back. This, again, harkens and is very parallel to like a relapse. When you really get into understanding of getting out of being manipulated, getting separated, indistinct, meaning not just if you envision like all those electrodes, it's like take all those electrodes, like the Tesla Neuralink and all the stuff. Do you really, how plugged in, manipulated, um, and do so you got to remove those and sort of realize that to the physical level, and including if you've ever seen someone who's really shell shocked. I mean, they almost have like seizure type behavior. They're so they're so afraid, but they're so trying to hold it together, all the pieces. That's not, stuffing down the feelings, just living in denial, just whatever it is. And eventually you have to say, enough is enough, especially if you see things escalating. And then it's time to know that something is awry, something is off, and you must, and then initiate and instigate your free will. And knowing basically that you're going to feel like you might be hurting someone else's feeling by getting to be clear and saying, no, that I don't want to sort of have this ongoing in my life. It's causing me a disability. It's causing me to not feel well. It's causing me to not think well. It's causing me to not behave well, or in ways that shouldn't be, for me now. In other words, I shouldn't still having to be in a jealousy cycle, always reacting. That's if you've been trained, you have to realize then that is erroneous and flawed thinking, that is basically, if you continue then to stay too close, if you don't accept what degree of manipulation has taken place, and basically those tools, and those don't have anything to do with the real you, the truth, your strength, and better than that, your power, which is your own awareness, that you don't have to deflect all that negativity. It doesn't have to be on the constant. There's another way of being. And that hot potato, when they're catching it, realize that they're just trying to throw a part of themselves that they can't deal with, and they want you to be more responsible for their negativity, that you absorb it, and then identify, and you can't even move on. It's like you've got a ball and chain. This is a very painful way of living, and it is okay to recognize that you were very steeped in a fear because of this. And it's like and it's okay to then retreat and say, I am, and just say, and get to know, and just say, and that I know that fear, I don't have to bring that into my next moment here. I don't have to bring that degradation with me. That is not part of my actual body. When you reclaim that, when you say, I look at all the basically, how does it, it's very difficult for people to describe this, because it sounds really crazy. There's a darkness within me, or there's usually it's a feeling of being small. Sort of, I shouldn't be doing this right now. Or if the narcissist, oh, I shouldn't be having to be cleaning this right now. Or so then you feel like awkward, just like living even in the minute moments of your day, that there's, you're always sort of living in the fear. There's a fear front coming in. In other words, a cold front, there's always sort of this feeling. That is not normal here, folks. And don't worry about it, because that will go away. You can give it away at your next garage sale. You can put it out at the dumpster. You can say thank you very much, but I don't want that heaviness. Like, maybe you've got like a huge trunk of 35 pounds of armor that you're still carrying around all through you in your life, and you feel that it's too heavy, unmanageable. It doesn't make you a bad person to not want to be guilted into identifying and staying in an abusive pattern. It's okay. You can eventually grow and mature and define and rise up and just say, no, thank you. I mean, just with grace, with basically your own awareness, just to say, no, thank you. And that if they can't accept your limitations without you having to explain and justify why and who you are, what you need, what you're, until you're having to, living in happiness shouldn't having to be explaining and justifying yourself. There's other ways of absorbing and interacting with life that can be more fulfilling, freeing, and liberating, and stress reducing rather than stress inducing. These, the tools of manipulation, and there's a degree of stress that's normal, but there's a very strong degree of stress inducing sort of, or that leads to when you're really when someone who is psychopathic, they don't ever have a sense of wanting to relate. If they're manipulating, they don't ever have an intention. They would have an ability, but they would get too bored. A psychopath, the problem and the gravity of the hurts with psychopathic manipulation is that they have a heightened ability to sense, acknowledge, and validate, like, who is the plum prime picking for me to sort of pick on and groom, basically, and become who they need and want me to be. And then basically there's a parasitic, they'll move in with them, they'll get the job there, they'll buddy them, there's usually some in or some way, this big win that usually comes with like the relationship. Then it's like there's this feeling, this euphoria when they're grooming you. All of your prayers are going to be answered. They're taking you to the heights of the world. They're going to they have these gifts. Their way of everything that they say just seems to melt you. And you felt, oh, this is what they must be talking about in movies. This is the job. This is the love. This is the affair, and then all these things begin building up in your mind, and you don't realize it's a very potent neurochemical mix that's getting you sort of diluted into this googly gaga, yippity doo-dah, whatever romance relationship, which can be very wonderful. It has its pleasure, but the only problem is the psychopath who has no conscience, who is devoid of an ability to sort of feel love, closeness, or fear. They, based on their own structural differences in their own brain, it gives them it's like an ability for them to hurt people and not have any sensation of remorse or regret or any sort of loss. There's an eerie calm over a psychopath. In other words, they could lose their dog, a family member, and they just don't have any sort of, their body just doesn't go into that sort of grieving. They don't feel bad if they're, not giving or delaying a meeting. A boss makes you wait maybe 2 hours or 3 days, or and then don't worry, and doing these obscene things where they really have you sort of in a neurochemical when it becomes that sort of manipulation. They're really getting a full neurological change in their target, their victim, because they're deluding them and manipulating them and giving them specifically what they need and to hear in that specific moment. It's like it's akin as if there was a blind person and then someone of sight just taking their hand and saying, "Oh, come with me, sir. I will show you the bathroom. Come with me, ma'am. I will take you to the door." I mean, they have another ability, like a fifth sense, a sixth sense, a seventh sense, where they're going, "Oh, if I just say this, if I guide them, if I give them this vision, they'll decode and corrupt a normal way of thinking for someone." And the problem is that neurochemical change in the target, where there's a terror and a devoid of thinking, which basically has to be, it's the psychopath that is sort of planning on dropping that emotional, sort of very dangerous situation to people that they know would be gravely upsetting, that they know would ruin them, that they know they wouldn't get the income, that they wouldn't have, your whole vision of life just shatters, for them. They don't know how to navigate their life. It's very terrifying. So, but the thing to understand is that hot potato is you don't have to catch it. If you're being projected, if you're being manipulated, you're so terrible, you're so this, or those feelings are coming on, or you have a belief, a set of beliefs that are still running. I am not attractive. I am not good enough. I am not. You're defined by the I am not rather than the I am. Then you need to acknowledge and validate where you are at. And you have to have rigorous honesty with yourself and go, okay, that is not proper and that is not correct. That is flawed thinking. That is a seed that has been planted, but that you can supplant, which means you can get ahead of. You can see that those are the seeds of doubt, the seeds of discontent, the seeds of and of course you can see how that would proliferate moving forward if you weren't able to get a hold on it and basically snip it out like an emotional limb. Like, no, that's not happening here. That's not, that's just manipulation. It has nothing to do with me. So if you can see the distinction that their reach only goes so far, and if you can't see that, you must understand that part of your ego is still wanting to be arm in arm, or needs to be arm in arm, and still have that as a victim. Like your ego, your I am, you're still living, breathing, eating, I'm a victim. So you have to look at and say, then I'm not going to grab the victim potato. I'm not going to walk through the victim door. I'm not going to put on the victim jumpsuit. I'm not going to, put on the stupid dodo, whatever it is I'm supposed to pick up and deal with for us. When you find you're doing more for others than you're doing for yourself, and they're enabling it, fanning the flames, you need to dial it down, and you need to reclaim something, and you need to reclaim, and not in the darkness, not in the where they, because it's literally like a dark paint, go there. They basically are telling, put a dark, yeah, go there, that'll be perfect for you. Oh, okay, boom, ha ha ha, it's not funny. And then until you say, okay, and you can, and it can be very fearful, it can be very scary to learn and know, and to be able to see, though, the light through the end of the tunnel. When you first feel that, and you feel, I am not of the innocent, I am of the wrong, I am the soiled, or something is not right about me, and you're feeling like part of your life is too much, got that still going on, you need to back it up. And not, it's like you back it up, meaning back up, like literally, get your body out of the physical space and reclaim really what all you are, especially when it comes to breathing and sort of peppering in, just sort of strength, like, and just living. And instead of the breakdown, it's just like you just chasse back into, whatever's your fullness of being, like wellness and strength of being. And that's where you can get back to the clean slate, the innocence. You want to find love again. You want to find joy again. You want to find travel again. It's going to be different at this time of your life. You might, want to say, and instead of getting so caught up in, I can't remember all that, fog, don't live in the fog. That's, you might be living in London emotionally for part of the year where there's a lot of cool, eerie fog going on. Say cool, reframe it. Look at all this cool, beautiful fog. It is tiny micro droplets, of water, between water and cold, and just, but know it for what it is. And then see, but great, I've got a fog light, like here internally, I can see what I need to see. And sometimes just seeing and accepting, there's a fog here, and then just being like, hey, a moment, let me get this. Give yourself a moment to back it up and say, and think it clearly, and not feel that you're soaking in the pad of misery. Or, the sooner you can get rid of that all, it's no longer in your habitation, will be the better, will be the merrier. I never thought I could do it. Living in avoidance, procrastination. I never thought I could be free. Then you need to have a statement, and then you need to develop this in the new year. I am so happy to be emotionally free in what that means for my stability. I am so happy to be emotionally free in what that means for my stability. Okay, and what it means for my clarity and my happiness and my gut I am, and to be grounded, your feet, planted. Oh, it's not so scary, during that whole prelude, your feet are like floating in outer space. You can't see. It's terrifying. You're living in misery. That will not last. Okay. It's very important, though, that you acknowledge the tools of manipulation for what they are. And in maturity, being able to acknowledge and validate and have the responsibility and to say, I see the manipulation. I'm not going down. Thank you very much. I see the manipulation. I'm not, going up or falling for that. Yeah, I'll just, throw away my life savings. I'll just, no, you have to know your own parameters in your own terms and stick by them. And you need to be able to speak about it and orate it. So, for example, while you're making your coffee and, or you're feeling that tremor coming on, that panic pattern, I am so happy to be emotionally debt-free. I am so happy to be emotionally debt-free. And this feels so much more comfortable. It's great to live in a comfortable body. And repeating that over and over again. You might need to watch this video, but until you can run that in your being, meaning not just your vocalization, but until you can really run that through your being, and to really acknowledge and validate that. It's kind of, and it will come maybe gradually. It might not be there the first time. This channel has been going on for years, 6 years. This is a development. This is progressing. This is understanding where a new launch is beginning. And do you have the ability to reclaim your potential for the way you want to be living and not the way you want to be lying. And say, I truly need, to be rigorously honest with myself, I truly need, even though I don't want to look at it, to be rigorously honest, what I truly need to do is, even though it takes so much energy, what I really need to do is. And even though I don't want to admit it to myself, what I really would be happier being is. And so getting to know that, getting to know you, like it, you have to dance with it a little bit. You have to get to know it a little bit. You have to, is it worth this dance? Is this going to be a short term? Can I trust, what is in my best interest? And to develop a tiny new way of thinking that is more, I guess what psychologists would call resilient. Oh, just be more resilient is usually what a psychologist will say. Yeah, if you could only help me, show me how. And they're like, well, just read this one book. They don't really identify, especially what it is to heal and recover from narcissist injury, being narcissist abuse, psychopathic abuse, to be manipulated to the point of taking advantage of your good qualities, to the point that they have used the tactics of hurting your feelings as their weapon of choice, if you will. And it's very hard to believe that there are different types of people. If you're very saturated in the sort of interaction or relationship with this type of being, it's very difficult to have what you would call a relationship, because to them it's a falsetto versus a genuine. And I don't think that for a lot of people it's long-term sustainable when you really get down to it. And that's really when people start evaluating it and exposing it. And and instead of devaluing yourself and saying, oh, look, I couldn't deal with this, I couldn't put up with it, I couldn't cope, it's not a failure or a weakness of your defense mechanism. It is only your strength to step out of this cycle. I mean, it's like you might have to change your zip code. You might have to change your area code. You might have to change your, where you're getting your emails. It's okay to step out of a cycle of abuse, to make you other than a victim that they want to then create and pounce. It is okay to decide logically and emotionally soundly to say it's okay to have a different type of relationship, to say no to that what appears to be a hayride, and then it basically then develops into something else. Is something else where basically you feel victimized. It does not need to get to that. It's okay to put on the emotional brakes and say, you know what, I'm going to make a choice. And what does it mean then in that moment to not be a victim? What does it mean then in that moment to not participate or to not be pulled by guilt, to not be driven by jealousy, or to be under those sort of tangs of manipulation, and to really understand what manipulation is and to see through it and to be better and to acknowledge and validate that you are on the right path. And then you'll know it when you begin to experiment with not attracting the negative feelings in the first place. And saying, so a lot of our viewers ask that question, how can I stop? Well, then, you have to then make a declaration. You need to look forward in your prefrontal cortex, which means, once you kind of get that separation, and then you can get in your heart space and you can say, I don't want to attract these bad feelings in the first place. I don't want to attract this sort of destructive relationship in the first place. I don't want to enter into that feeling space, or that eating space. I don't want to enter into that eating space. It doesn't work out. I don't want to enter into that gambling space. It doesn't work out. I don't want to enter into that transactional, am I good enough sort of okayness. What is it like to live without the, being, defending and justifying yourself and not being backstabbed, and give yourself a chance to experience it, and then come back and then make some determinations and discoveries for yourself, especially when it comes to the belief space. This is your buddy, Peace and Harmony, with you here today, and I hope that these videos do help. Please share, please subscribe, and for goodness sake, please donate for more great tools, videos, discussions, and support. Peace out. Have a beautiful day.